And as the export row continues to rise in the region after Japan's trade action on high-tech exports to South Korea, global businesses are bracing themselves for a hit to their supply chain. Now, joining me live via Skype is Waqas ADENWALA, Asia Analyst for the Economist Intelligence Unit. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that it's very early for you there.
Good morning to you too. It's here 6 a.m. in Singapore.
Now, first, given the fact that South Korean companies produce the lion's share of the world's memory chips and OLED, what will be the immediate impact on other IT firms around the world, and which companies do you think will be affected in particular?
Right, so if you look at the Japanese restrictions, they're restrictions, not pure bans. But the major problem there is going to be the fact that the delays are going to be around 3 months instead of the usual processing time. So the immediate impact is going to be delayed production. It's going to be delivery in slow exports from just Korea. So when you receive supplies slowly from places like South Korea to the US, or actually a major supplying process in China, you can see that all these companies will be affected. The major companies that we see going to be affected will be ones in IT, such as Apple, as you rightly mentioned, or even HTC in South Korea. But also the ones in Japan, because when you talk about supply chains, even the suppliers are going to be affected, and all the suppliers in Japan were completely caught unaware by the Japanese government's restrictions.
Right, so what you're saying is that companies just worldwide, as well as those in Japan, will be hit by these measures eventually. So it seems the trade dispute won't be fizzling out anytime soon, although we hope so. How great of an impact do you think that this conflict could have on the entire global supply chain?
So the global supply chain obviously is not going to be solved anytime soon. If you look at the actual trade war happening between China and the US too, there are obviously some countries that benefited, like Vietnam. So those disruptions have helped Vietnamese companies do better. Similar to Japan and South Korea's trade disputes, this is not a trade tariff war, it's more of a trade barriers war, given the restrictions are of a non-monetary nature. So we can also expect some other countries like China. China has a massive semiconductor industry too that is trying to boost up. Obviously not the same quality as South Korean ones, but this will actually give a very big boost to the Chinese ones, also the ones in Taiwan. So they will actually be able to benefit from this disruption in some way.
So China and Taiwan, those firms there could be, it could be a benefit for them. Now, what do you think is the best way for South Korean companies, as well as other companies affected around the world, could overcome this crisis in the short and as well as the longer term?
In the short term, actually, they will feel some pain. For sure, because obviously if the companies are not keeping supplies longer for more than a month, and if the restrictions are causing delays for up to 90 days, which is roughly 3 months, in short term they will definitely face some delays. Moon Jae-in's government has obviously said they're going to try to do as much as they can to reduce this trouble for the companies, which means effectively they'll try to source in supplies from different parts of the world to diversify the chains of supplies as well, and not just rely on Japanese products. In the long term, actually, this will just encourage the government and the companies in South Korea to be more innovative. It will try to push up the drive for R&D itself as well. But we have to remember, trade wars and trade barriers are never great. So countries which have a competitive advantage in producing the components used in semiconductor devices, which are greater in Japan, obviously, it will take time for any other country to be able to produce them with the same quality and the same price. So competitive advantage is going to be lost in the long term for sure. In the long term, even if South Korea is able to source it from a different varied supply chain route and not just Japan, we have to remember Japan is going to suffer a lot in the long term too, because their suppliers are obviously relying on the South Korean semiconductor companies to buy those products from them.
Absolutely. All right. Waqas ADENWALA, Asia Analyst for the Economist Intelligence Unit. Thank you for your insights this morning.